Good evening and welcome. So my name is Edward Kopp. I'm the John I. Eckel Junior Foundation Chief Curator of the Menil Drawing Institute. And thank you for joining us for this memorial lecture this evening on Bernice Rose. So Bernice was a legendary curator at the Museum of Modern Art in New York for many years. And there she did really groundbreaking work on many important modern contemporary artists. In 1976, she curated a landmark exhibition titled Drawing Now from 1955 to 1975, which did much to really bring the medium of drawing back to the center of discussion and attention. And she argued that the generation, including artists like Cy Twombly, Michael Heiser, John Cage, and Dorothea Rockburn, treating drawing not as a secondary medium, but, as I quote, as a major and independent medium with distinctive possibilities altogether its own, end quote. In 2007, Bernice was appointed the inaugural chief curator of the Menil Drawing Institute. So that's years before this building was built. But she soon began to spearhead the Jasper Jones catalogue raisonné of drawings, a massive project in which tonight's speaker, Eileen Costello, was very, very heavily involved. The 6-volume catalogue raisonné of the drawings of Jasper Jones was published by the Menil with Yale University Press in 2018. So Bernice left us in 2023, but it was immediately clear to Menil director Rebecca Rabineau and myself that we should honor Bernice in a meaningful way. So this lecture was timed specifically to coincide with the current show on view at the Drawing Institute called What Drawing Can Be for Responses, which, even though its format is different from Bernice's show, it's without question in the lineage of Bernice's Drawing Now. So we are very pleased to have among us some members of Bernice's family. Thank you for being with us. And also we're very grateful to Eileen for taking on this task of celebrating the life and achievement of Bernice. So Eileen is a historian of modern contemporary art. She's also the project manager of the Ellsworth Kelly catalogue raisonné. And as someone who knew Bernice very well and also worked closely with her, we thought that she was the right person to celebrate Bernice this evening. And lastly, I want to bring your attention to the fact that after the presentation, there'll be a Q&A with Eileen. And following that, we invite you to join us for a special viewing of very fine drawings tied to Bernice in multiple ways. And that will be in our study room, the Jenny City drawing room, outside of this glass door. And you'll see works that either she gave the Menil, she collected for the Menil, that were given to the Menil in her honor, or by artists that she adored. So you'll see multiple facets of Bernice through the collection. And lastly, please silence your cell phones and now join me in welcoming Eileen Costello. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward, for that kind invitation. And so, yes, thank you for coming out tonight for this talk. I'd especially like to thank Rebecca Rabineau and Edward Cope for inviting me to speak here today on Bernice Rose.
I'm sorry, I got it.
Thank you. I need my glasses. So yes, I'd especially like to thank Rebecca Rabineau and Edward Culp for inviting me to speak here today on Bernice Rose. Or Bunny, as she was known among close friends. Toward the end of her long and storied career, Bernice was the chief curator and later chief curator emerita of the Menil Drawing Institute and Study Center, and it is an honor for me to give a lecture on her many remarkable achievements. With Bernice's passing in April 2023, the art world lost an extraordinary force. I knew her for over 25 years and found her to be deeply intelligent, adventurous, and wholly committed to her work. She championed drawing as an independent and vital art form, challenging the long-standing notion that it lacked the weight of painting or sculpture. Her exhibitions were both imaginative and rigorous, and her devotion to contemporary drawing was boundless. She was an outstanding connoisseur, but also a steadfast friend to many, especially artists like Saul LeWitt, Klaus Oldenburg, Kosha van Bruggen, Richard Serra, Michael Heitzer, and Jasper Johns. She formed strong alliances with dealers and patrons, acquiring major works for the Museum of Modern Art, where she spent over 30 years, and later for the Menil. Hers was a world of curators, dealers, collectors, artists, art historians, students, and the art-loving public in general, a community she loved and thrived in. Bernice was greatly distinguished in both her writings and her curatorial ventures by her prescient recognition of the vitality and importance of contemporary drawing. She recognized that drawing had moved from life class study or the traditional portrait or landscape and perceived of the new emergent ways of drawing, the many roles that drawing could play, the endless possibilities of new technologies, the artist as performer. In 1976, Bernice claimed, quote, "As a discipline, drawing had, with few exceptions, remained within the parameters basically defined by the end of the 17th century," end quote. She sought to call our attention to the fact that that reality had changed and that contemporary drawing was, in actuality, an independent and vital art form, and that many drawings are not traces of some other activity, nor are they searching experiments, but they are complete in and of themselves. Over the course of Bernice's illustrious career, she focused primarily on drawing, and she continually exhibited her commitment to and pursuit of the medium in its many iterations. From the open-ended sketch to the fully finished work, Bernice embraced all types of drawing. She recognized early on that for a generation of artists who emerged in the 1960s, the art of drawing knew no boundaries. It would not be an understatement to say that Bernice's scholarship made her a legend in her own time. Her stature in the field was unmistakable. I recall introducing her to David Anfam, a renowned scholar of abstract expressionism, at a college art association gathering. Despite his own renown, he was visibly starstruck. Bernice was, without question, a superstar in the world of drawing. Bernice earned and enjoyed extraordinary career achievements. She was quite the trailblazer. In 1975, she became the first woman to lead the Museum of Modern Art's drawing department as senior curator, which was quite an accomplishment at that time. As she stated in her oral history recorded for MoMA, quote, "In those years, the 1960s and 70s, doing anything as a woman in the art world was extremely difficult. While at MoMA, the women basically worked in a world dominated by men. It was felt that men wielded the necessary power and credibility to attract the wealth and influence required to sustain the institution. Just to give you an idea of the pushback that Bernice and many of her female colleagues faced, MoMA did not appoint a woman to the position of chief curator of painting and sculpture until Anne Temkin was given that title in 2008. And so, not least of all, Bernice was among a group of strong young women who paved the way for future female art historians to advance more readily through the ranks of MoMA and likely other museums as well. Born in 1935 in Miami Beach, Bernice moved to Brooklyn as a child and fell in love with art at the Brooklyn Museum. She studied painting at Hunter College with Robert Motherwell and William Baziodes, but found the art world unwelcoming to women painters. After earning her bachelor's and then a master's in art history from NYU's Institute of Fine Arts, she still painted but felt stymied. However, it was Frank Stella's breakthrough new paintings Bernice saw at MoMA that ended her painting career. As she said, quote, "I'll never do anything that smart." So instead of continuing to paint, she learned typing and rudimentary shorthand. In the early 1960s, Bernice found employment at the Museum of Modern Art, where she was hired to work on special events and fundraisers. She always maintained that she couldn't type because she didn't want to be a secretary, so she next took on odd jobs such as answering the phone in the education department. In the early 1960s, Bernice found employment at the Museum of Modern Art, where she was hired to work on special events and fundraisers. She always maintained that she couldn't type because she didn't want to be a secretary, so she next took on odd jobs such as answering the phone in the education department. One of her earliest assignments was to clean the exhibitions. Every morning, she would go down and dust Bill Seitz's Arshile Gorky exhibition, which is what you're looking at here now, or the Rodin exhibition, which allowed her to study things very, very closely. It was the best job, she said, that anybody could have. She soon worked her way up to positions in the painting and sculpture department, first as an associate curator and later as an assistant curator. In 1971, Bernice joined the museum's newly created Department of Drawings, and in 1975, she was named the department's senior curator. To advance from answering phones to becoming senior curator at MoMA's newly formed drawings department within a decade was a significant achievement, especially for a woman in the 1970s. One could say she broke the glass ceiling. Bernice's focus on the medium of drawing is something that she said she had fallen into. At first, her work in the drawings department consisted of handling the volume of drawings that other museums requested to borrow and to catalog prints before they went out on loan. She then had to find replacements for the works that were let out to other institutions. Eventually, she was signing the loan letters and installing the drawings exhibitions. She also wrote the wall texts. Bernice recognized that these were jobs of great responsibility and power, which she took quite seriously. As an assistant curator in the Department of Drawings, and this was the first time in the museum's history that a Department of Drawings had been established as a separate curatorial unit at MoMA, she worked under the tutelage of the legendary curator William Lieberman. Lieberman had started his lengthy career at MoMA in 1943, and at one point was the assistant to the museum's founding director, Alfred Barr. In Lieberman, Bernice found an extraordinary and generous mentor. I once asked her how she had learned so much about drawing and how she had so skillfully honed her eye to such an impressive degree, and she told me that it was from working with Lieberman at MoMA. He gave her free rein, and Bernice went on to organize a long stretch of important drawing exhibitions at MoMA, elevating the medium on each occasion and demonstrating once again that drawing was deserving of its own attention. While working under Lieberman in the drawing department, she organized several major shows, including Jean Arp on Paper, Jackson Pollock Drawing into Painting, A Century of Modern Drawing from the Museum of Modern Art, Roy Lichtenstein Drawings, which was the first time that the Museum of Modern Art honored a living artist with a drawings exhibition. Oh, and there's Bernice wiping a tear from the museum poster. She assembled allegories of modernism and the Cézanne Treasure, the Basel sketchbooks, among many other exhibitions. She always greatly delighted in showcasing the younger generation's drawings. One series of exhibitions that she initiated, New Work on Paper, focused on the dynamic, changing role of contemporary drawing. It became an annual exhibition. She highlighted works by artists better known for their endeavors in other areas: painting, sculpture, and performance art. Their works ranged from traditional drawings, either independent of or related to major works in other media, to drawings on atypical surfaces, such as aluminum or fiberglass panels. The point was to explore the richness and vitality of contemporary drawing. Bernice championed and galvanized works on paper, as well as other surfaces, because she felt that drawing was as essential and valued as any other art object being made. She always maintained that drawing involved as much about seeing, thinking, and interrogating as it would any art object, and she continually reaffirmed this ideology through her many exhibitions and her deeply thoughtful essays. Her training at MoMA included organizing the complicated logistics of turning some of the shows into international exhibitions. This involved thinking through the structure of the exhibitions within the different museums. In the process, Bernice came to know curators and museum directors throughout Europe and South America. She was well-traveled and very well-connected. (1976) was an especially important year for Bernice as senior curator in the Department of Drawings, for it was the year of her landmark exhibition, Drawing Now, 1955 to 1975, in which she'd organized a broad and eclectic array of over 225 drawings by more than 45 artists, ranging from Cy Twombly and Michael Heiser to Robert Rauschenberg, Joseph Beuys, Dorothea Rockburn, and Eva Hesse. This historic exhibition spanned approximately 25 years of art making, calling attention to the work of a new generation of American and European artists, including groups known as minimalists, post-minimalists, and conceptual artists. In fact, Drawing Now revealed and underscored the radical transformation of the medium. There were many unconventional works on view by artists who were not necessarily known for drawing, such as Bruce Naumann's 1967 My Last Name Extended Vertically 14 Times, a nearly 7-foot-high study for one of his neon sculptures, along with the 1972 Richard Tuttle drawing, fashioned from pencil and wire. Watercolors, gouaches, pastels, collages, modified silkscreen prints, airbrushed pigments, and lines incised or scratched on stone, metal, bark, or earth, with any tool, including plows and motorcycles, were all acceptable as drawings. Bernice understood that drawings don't have to be on a paper support. Further, these artists had also taken drawing from a private to a public mode in works like Solowitz's site-specific wall drawings that he began to make in the late 60s and early 1970s. The aim of the exhibition was to call attention to the resurgence and importance of drawing in contemporary art. The show explored what a drawing could be and laid down the basis for understanding a redefinition of the role of drawing from the past to the present. Drawing Now announced the modernist reinvention of the drawing practice. The 45 artists included had seriously investigated the nature of drawing and revitalized it by investing major energies in fundamental reevaluation of the medium. It was Bernice's Drawing Now exhibition that put the medium of drawing back on the map. For up until that time, drawing had become largely sidelined, as it was considered less significant than painting and sculpture. But as Bernice made clear in her Drawing Now catalogue essay, this younger generation of artists had taken to drawing with a renewed intensity. She sided with them and argued that the drawings that these artists were making were just as significant as the other artworks that they were involved in creating, often three-dimensional constructions. In her catalogue essay, she noted, quote, "Drawing has moved from that of a minor support medium to that of a major and independent medium with distinctive expressive possibilities altogether its own." Such an astute observation established Bernice as a drawing curator of considerable heft and prescience. Drawing Now put Bernice on the map. The show included drawings that varied tremendously in technique, medium, size, scale, and imagery, yet almost all shared a similar embrace of process. That is, they depicted something found through the process of making. Each artist exhibited a continually evolving and adventurous idea of drawing. Solowitz's huge, elaborate 1975 wall drawing, lines from the center, the corners, and the sides, measuring 12 feet high and almost 27 feet long and done in white crayon on a wall that had been painted black, was the first thing one saw when they entered the museum's lobby. The side room was not embellished so much as altered. The exhibition itself opened with Robert Rauschenberg's 1953 erased de Kooning drawing, which was a rather provocative choice to open a drawing show with. Erased de Kooning called into question what a drawing could be. The title is completely descriptive. Robert Rauschenberg literally erased a pencil and charcoal drawing by Louis de Kooning. With erased de Kooning drawing, Rauschenberg set out to discover whether an artwork could be produced entirely through erasure, an act focused on the removal of marks rather than their accumulation. It can also be read as evidence of an action or a recording of an event, and as such is aligned with the precepts of action painting or gestural abstraction that dominated the New York art scene in the early 1950s. It testified to how the materiality of the art object had undergone a profound reassessment. The work is a resultant artifact of a performance-like gesture. Bernice also included Richard Serra's 1974 Abstract Slavery. The first of his installation drawings, that is, works he made on canvas that he then had stapled directly onto the wall. The drawing on canvas is a huge trapezoid made with blocks of industrious yet seductive black paint stick on 168 square feet of Belgian linen. According to Serra, the blackness is not on the drawing, it is the drawing. As such, the drawing suppressed ambient light and altered perceptions of the room in which it was installed. Corners and walls shifted in the viewer's peripheral vision. Serra remarked in a well-known interview that drawing is anything that you can project as expressive from the act of doing, be it ideas, metaphors, emotions, or language structure. For Serra and for many artists of his generation, drawing was a verb. Drawing was also about touch, Bernice said, referring to Robert Morris's 1973 traveling limit of reach installed across a long hallway that led to the main exhibition space. Viewers were treated to a process wall piece in which the artist dipped his hands and feet in a graphite and petroleum oil mix and shuffled down the corridor of the museum. The result was 2 rows of hands in gradations of sharp black to smudgy gray, and a row of similarly graded feet planted on a strip of paper rolled out on the floor. There was Dorothea Rockburn's Neighborhood, also from 1973, which was comprised of a series of diagonal and vertical lines in both pencil and colored pencil on the wall, with a sheet of semi-transparent in a central position between them, a semi-transparent paper in a central position between them. The orientation of the lines and the regular geometry of the paper suggest a relationship between the two of movement and a tracing of action. Drawing, sculpting, and performance are all present, though it is drawing that is explored. Bernice included John Cage's 1958 musical score, Concert for Piano and Orchestra, which heretofore had never been considered a drawing. Robert Smithson's 1973 slate grind was installed on plinths overlooking the museum's garden. Each piece consists of a section of slate on which the artist incised a partial circle. These late works by Smithson encompass a number of his central interests: materiality, deep time, aerial views, a critique of extractive industries, and geological history. The slate grinds speak to Smithson's parallel sculptural and drawing concerns. Although each displayed piece resembles sculpture meant to be looked at from above, they have a clear line of drawing on their surfaces. The concentric circles in Eva Hesse's 1966 Untitled displayed her interest in repetition as a formal and conceptual strategy. She relied upon the grid on the paper to enable her obsessive organization of circles. They appear mechanical, but each is hand-drawn within an individual square on the sheet. From this very simple formula, she extracted dark-centered circles. Here, the dark-centered circles make them appear ominous or almost invisible. The precise delineation of the circles is absorbed into the cloud of wash until the drawing is carefully pre-used. They come back into focus, almost like an Ad Reinhardt drawing, a possible influence. Robert Ryman's 1963 stretched drawing is exactly that: charcoal on unprimed stretched cotton canvas stapled to a wood stretcher. As the title purports, the artist considers the work to be a drawing. He first drew on a grid on a stretched canvas, unstretched it, and then stretched it again, emphasizing the fragility of the image and the pliability of the surface. The bare cotton weave of the fabric is as much a part of the work as the lines that lay on top of it. Ryman limited his format primarily to the square and his palette, almost exclusively to white, beginning in 1957, which is a self-limitation that he stuck to for the duration of his career, finding them expansive and infinitely renewable. Ryman often talked like a minimalist. The painting is exactly what you see, he said, meaning it is without illusion. It is what you see and nothing else. It is completely honest in its physical and material presence, which involves no tricks, puns, or hidden agendas. It is simply and directly a real object, referring to nothing outside itself, stating nothing but its own identity. Ryman embraced minimal means to infinite ends. There is also a slide of Jasper Johns' Diver from 1962-63, a 7-by-6-foot drawing done in chalk and pastel. Johns in particular contributed to the notion of a drawing as an autonomous object. He typically makes drawings after paintings rather than preliminary drawings for paintings, the reverse of what one might intuit. Bernice characterized Diver as perhaps the most ambitious drawing of the past 20 years and described it as, quote, a manifesto of the independence of draftsmanship. Michael Heitzer contributed his 1970 circular surface plane displacement, an earthwork that was created by describing lines on this desert surface with a motorcycle. The circular patterns cut into the dry surface of Jean Lake in Nevada, expanding the medium into scale, action, and terrain. Now in the collection of the Museum of Modern Art, the complete set of Rauschenberg's 34 drawings for Dante's Inferno from 1958 to 1960 was also on view. With the Dante series, Rauschenberg invented narrative images which work in contemporary terms. The imagery was taken from magazine illustrations. They were a brilliant technician developed from a technique for transferring to the drawing sheet pre-printed images from the popular press. The transfers were made by moistening the drawing with solvent, likely lighter fluid. The reproduction was placed face down against a dampened area, and the reverse of the reproduction was rubbed with the head of a ballpoint pen. The transfer process lifted the ink so that the image appears as already made, isolated from its context and reversed from the original. He also added touches of gouache, crayon, and pencil. Mixing images snipped from the contemporary media world, Rauschenberg called them combine drawings. They were neither printing nor drawing, but a hybrid. Rauschenberg provided a contemporary context for Dante's poem, including forms such as athletes, astronauts, and popular figures such as John F. Kennedy. John Cage was the first to liken the Dante drawings to the flickering images of a television set, which the artist constantly watched in his studio as he labored over the series. The drawings influenced the artist's shift to his silkscreen prints, bringing him increased acclaim. Drawing Now is lauded by John Russell in the New York Times as one of the best and most useful exhibitions ever mounted by the Museum of Modern Art. But it should be noted that the exhibition was not universally praised. Jean Perrault of New York's Village Voice was outraged. He wrote in the weekly influential paper, quote, "Once again, the Museum of Modern Art has managed to insult the art world and by extension the public. Many viewers were jolted awake by the distortions of contemporary drawing, which was exactly the point. The show's premise was to illustrate a theory to prove regarding drawing's transcendence of its traditional position. As John Russell noted, quote, drawing in this sense is not a matter of primarily delineation. It has to do with the activation of a given surface, with marks that convey new kinds of meaning in an arresting, concise, and original way. Prior to Drawing Now, it would not be an exaggeration to say that drawing had generally been regarded as a conservative medium, resistant to ideas of innovation or extension. But Bernice recognized and made evident that the radical evolution of drawing that took place during the latter part of the 20th century was due to a number of American and European artists who subjected the traditional concepts of the medium to a critical examination. In a revolutionary departure from the institutional definition of drawing and from reliance on paper as a fundamental support, numerous artists instead pushed the line across the plane and into the real space, expanding the medium in relation to gesture and form, and connecting it with film, music, and dance. The exhibition overturned the parameters of drawing and stretched the medium almost beyond recognition, while allowing it to be accepted in the broader field of contemporary ideas and practices. Oh, this slide is out of place. Anyway, prior to Drawing Now, it would not be an exaggeration to say that drawing had generally been regarded as a conservative medium, resistant to ideas of innovation or extension. But Bernice recognized and made evident that the radical evolution of drawing that took place during the latter part of the 20th century was due to a number of American and European artists who subjected the traditional concepts of the medium to a critical examination. In a revolutionary departure from the institutional definition of drawing and from a reliance on paper as a fundamental support. I'm sorry, I think I already read this. Who subjected the traditional concepts of the medium to a critical examination. In a revolutionary departure from the institutional definition of drawing and from a reliance on painting as a fundamental support material, numerous artists instead pushed the line across the plane and into real space, expanding the medium in relation to gesture and form, and connecting it with film, music, and dance. The exhibition overturned the parameters of drawing and stretched the medium almost beyond recognition, while allowing it to be accepted in the broader field of contemporary ideas and practices. Bernice went on to organize a long list of important drawing exhibitions at MoMA, elevating the medium on each occasion and demonstrating once again that drawing was deserving of its own attention. This is the Bernice who I met in 1993 when I worked at Pace Wildenstein, a 57th Street gallery in New York, where I was employed as the executive assistant to the owner, Arnie Glimcher, also pictured here. That year, he had conceived of a separate drawing gallery, and he recruited Bernice to run it. I was a liaison between Arnie, who headed the gallery, and the rest of the staff, as well as the artists and artist estates. So Bernice and I were in fairly regular contact with one another on an almost daily basis. During her years at Pace's Drawing Gallery, 1993 to 2007, she organized more than 20 gallery exhibitions, each just as important as the previous. These shows included Bryce Marden drawings from 1964 to 1994, Ad Reinhardt and Pete Mondrian Affinities, Bernard Rothko Color and Light, and Picasso Brock and early film and cubism, to name just a few of the highlights she conceived of and implemented. She was venturesome. Bernice always had a cache of ideas percolating for her next show, her next book, her next article, her next presentation. I left Pace Wildenstein in July 1999 to pursue graduate studies at the University of Texas at Austin. A few weeks before I left the gallery, Bernice came running down the hallway toward my desk, waving a somewhat yellowed, slightly dog-eared looking book. It was her going away present for me, she said, a copy of her 1969 book, Jackson Pollock Works on Paper. She had included an inscription on its title page. Dear Eileen, my first book. Sorry it looks almost as battered as I. I'm looking forward now to yours. I cherish her Jackson Pollock Works on Paper book. In it, Bernice had tackled the development between Pollock's drawings in relation to his paintings, a feat which had never been attempted before. Perhaps most exciting to me was the fact that Lee Krasner, who had kept the drawings private, had allowed Bernice to sift through piles of undated Pollock drawings and to try and determine their exact chronological order. Bernice analyzed Pollock's use of symbol, line, and color, and in this way completely revamped the accepted development of Pollock's work. I thought that was amazing. And Bernice did get to see my first book, that of an artist's work who Bernice introduced me to. In 2013, Phaidon published my monograph on Bryce Marden, who, during the course of my research, made many of his drawings available for me to look through. Here I must emphasize that Bernice never, ever looked battered. She had a beautiful style, an enviable assuredness, and a stately elegance. She could occasionally give the impression of the absent-minded professor, but a fashionable one, for she favored Prada, Missoni, and the occasional Agnes B. When we worked together on 57th Street, our lunch dates consisted of window shopping at Bergdorf Goodman. Bernice spent her time with intelligent achievers, movers, and shakers, and people who wanted to make a positive difference in the world. She traveled to all kinds of faraway places and exotic locations. She socialized with the artists and the curators and collectors. Her authority was greatly informed by her close friendships with these people. She was a devotee of studio visits and was always traipsing to artists' lofts to look at their latest paintings and drawings and probe for helpful information. She was worldly and wise, organizing shows and writing catalogue essays. From my perspective, Bernice was living the life that she wanted to live. Not many people get to do that. Above all else, I loved looking at art with Bernice. We used to go to the auction previews together, and she would point out the most remarkable passage of paint or extraordinary pen and ink lines she had observed in even the smallest of works. Bernice had learned much from the renowned eye of Bill Lieberman as they went through the museum's collection together. Bernice in turn freely and generously imparted a considerable amount of knowledge and expertise to me. There was often a story behind what she wished to explain, and she was as fascinating a raconteur as she was enthralling an instructor. In 2007, Bernice joined the Menil as the inaugural chief curator to head the museum's new and as yet unbuilt Drawing Institute and Study Center, where she remained until her retirement in 2014. As she said upon her appointment, quote, "My first love has always been drawing. This kind of opportunity to come back into the field where I had developed my career was too tempting to pass up." And when asked by Joseph Helfenstein how she felt about the renewed idea of the Drawing Institute, Bernice replied, quote, "Frankly, I was thrilled. It seemed to me more important than ever to go forward with what had been discussed for so many years. And I thought, how fortunate that I'm still alive to do this." The conception of it, she added, was quote, to instruct scholars, to support scholars, to provide them with the materials. My job, as I see it, is to maintain a scholarly attitude in terms of the collecting so that we have the materials for other people to come and use and to make this an exciting place for people to work. Before they even broke ground, Bernice had begun to organize drawing exhibitions, such as collection-based exhibits showing for the first time a selection of the museum's most important modern drawings. One of her first exhibitions, How Artists Draw, toward the Menil Drawing Institute and Study Center, included 184 gouaches, sketches, watercolors, and collage from the Menil collection in combination with works on paper from private collections. "Artists draw any way they want," she wrote in her catalogue essay. "Any way they can. Definition is not their business." And in close concert with the artist, she also organized drawings on site, Klaus Oldenburg and Kosha van Bruggen. Simultaneously, she began to spearhead the Jasper Johns Drawings Catalogue Raisonné of Drawing. It was no easy task to get everyone on board, the artist enthused, and to secure the funds to complete such a large project. But Bernice made it happen, just as she so often did. And once the primary pieces were put in place, she asked me if I would manage the production of the Johns Catalogue Raisonné as his project director. At the time, given a choice to work on the catalogue raisonné of Johns' paintings and sculpture, which was in production simultaneously, or the drawings catalogue raisonné, I probably would have opted for working on the paintings project, excuse me. In retrospect, however, I realize how incredibly fortunate I was for having been given the opportunity to work on the drawing catalogue raisonné. Bernice was among the foremost experts on Jasper's drawings, and looking and thinking about them with her was, without question, among the richest and most fulfilling experiences for me in my career. In 2018, Yale University Press published the 6-volume catalogue raisonné of Johns' drawing. The artist, along with a team of researchers who contributed to the publication, are very proud of it. For Bernice, the publication is her magisterial swan song. The works that she acquired through purchases and gifts offer a remarkable collection of 20th and 21st century works on paper that served as a cornerstone of what would become the Drawing Center. By my count, she acquired over 60 works, ranging from those by William Anastasi, Marcel Bruthers, Cy Twombly, Christopher Wilmarth, and Joe Good. During her tenure, she organized a number of thematic shows that provided a conceptual framework for the public to understand the value and importance of modern and contemporary drawing. It's the job of art, she said, to change our vision, and in changing our vision, we unlock our human potential to the world and to change ourselves. Bernice played multiple roles: incubator-in-chief, visionary, chief champion of modern art in an ever-changing modern world. Bernice was the heart of the museum and its center of gravity. She endowed the museum with a restless force, driven by the belief that a museum that never stopped challenging itself could ever be forever modern. More recently, drawing has been energized by the vast proliferation of imagery from mechanical and electronic means, so that today contemporary drawing encompasses computer, AI, and internet art. Today, artists have further transformed the medium and called into question the relationship of today's art with artistic traditions in which it is rooted, as evidenced by a range of museum and gallery exhibitions, scholarly publications, art magazines, art fairs, and biennials. A renewed interest in drawing has made it one of the preferred media of the former, as well as the latest generation of artists, rendering it an important means of making art. I can't help but think that this is in no small part a component of Bernice's legacy. Thank you.
Do you want to take some questions, Eileen?
Yes, of course. Okay. Any questions?
So if you raise your hand, I'll bring a mic to you.
Well, I think most of the questions are being answered in the other room.
Right. Okay. Well, any comments, or if not, we can move into the drawing room. Thank you so much, Eileen.